All right, admissions peeps, I'm going to give you a quick tutorial here on the diesel program. And I'm going to walk you through these 5 classes and kind of give you an idea of what to talk about when you do your tours and stuff. So the first one we'll talk about is course 100, which is diesel engines and fuel systems. So of course the students will go over what a diesel engine is, how it operates, different types of diesel engines in the classroom. And they'll also have the online environment where there will be modules and electrodes that cover things like pistons and connecting rods and bearings and crankshafts and camshafts and turbochargers, explaining how all this stuff works. The lab environment itself is after they get an explanation of how things work, is that they'll come out here to these engines that we have right here in this lab, and they will disassemble these engines and learn how to do things on them, such as check cylinder block decks for flatness, right? Check this for flatness, how to measure the insides of bores to make sure they're worn, how to pull and replace cylinder sleeves. As you can see, the students that are currently working on this engine already have all their pistons out. So how to inspect the pistons, replace the bearings, how to test each individual component as you pull it off. So we'll learn how to test oil coolers, how to test the charge air coolers, tests that you can do on the turbochargers to make sure they're working properly. Even testing like this exhaust manifold that's laying here for flatness to make sure it's not warped from heat. So they will basically tear this engine completely down, and then as they're putting it back together, learn how everything on this engine works and how to test it. When they get done with the initial first part of this, which is the familiarization and the tear down and reassembly, the next thing they really start doing is learning fuel systems, which includes running engines and diagnostics. So once they get their engines put back together, they kind of go from this lab out to this lab or out to the actual trucks. And these are the engines that will actually start and run. They can do fuel system tests. They can plug in the computer and get fault codes. They learn how to communicate with the engines, how to troubleshoot the engines, how to use different websites to find service manuals for the different engines. So they do a lot of running engine work out here in this part of the lab. So they'll be able to diagnose. The instructors can actually create faults on the engine for the students to figure out why the engine's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. And by the time they get done with this course, they'll be pretty familiar with diesel engines, right? So then once they finish the engines class, and of course, as you know, scheduling isn't necessarily going to be in this order, but 200 is brakes, suspension, and steering. So if we go down this way, I'll take you guys to that lab. But in that lab, they got to learn things about hydraulic brakes, air brakes. Air brakes in commercial vehicles are heavily regulated, lots of DOT requirements behind them, so it's really important for them to know and understand this stuff. So, are you unlocked? I'm doing a walk around for the admissions guys so they understand better what to tell students that are potentially coming in here. So I'm going through each class. All right, so this is the classroom where a lot of the brake stuff is taught. You can see we got boards that simulate the actual air brake system on a truck so that they can learn what all the components look like, what they do. You can use these boards to do certain tests and demos. So you got air brake board there, an air brake board here. You look over here, you've got a hydraulic brake board. So a lot of theory, application, testing, and a lot of stuff can be done in this classroom on the brakes part.
We don't have any engine labs, so I'm trying to make some labs for the engines.
Nice.
I'll send them to the boss so everybody says it's cool.
I like that.
That's what I'm doing.
Initiative. All right, so in the brakes class, when they do 200, they're doing brake steering and suspension. A lot of it's brake stuff, right? It's pretty heavy in the brakes.
Yeah.
And then when they get done with brakes and you do the steering and suspension, you take them out in the actual trucks, do wheel ends.
We do wheel ends with brakes, we do kingpins, we do pull springs out, we pull, you know, everything off, all the way down, spiders, S-cams, everything.
So basically, almost like in the engines, when I told them we do a complete disassembly and then I build it back up so we know what everything does and where it goes. Same thing with brakes,
Yep. We talk
kingpin,
about
steering, suspension, all of
brakes
that.
on, we adjust them, check free stroke, we do everything.
All right. And then when they get to 300, which is the course I'm teaching, that's basic electrical and fundamentals of heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. So that 300 class right here, basically like it says in the paper that I gave you guys, they're learning basic electrical in this class. Fundamentals of what a diode is, what a relay does, what a, just basic electrical information, how to use Watt's law and Ohm's law, how to figure out resistance, amps, voltage, some fundamental training on how HVAC blowers work, starters, alternators, but they're not really applying this to any truck specific stuff yet. They're learning the electrical fundamentals, and then they'll start applying those electrical things they learned in 400 and 500.
Actually, we do in the 200 or 300, I mean, we do whatever AC electrical is. We do starter remover replacer, we do starter amp draws, we do battery draws, we do all that stuff in that class.
Right, so basics, but putting it all together in a overall view would be like a PM thing and
We finalize
a chassis electrical and all that, right?
We teach them multiplexing and how important that is.
All right. So the basic electrical does kind of go well with the heating, ventilation, and AC because that's a heavy electrical type setup there with the way fan clutches operates and climate controls and stuff like that. As part of the HVAC part of the 300 course, they're also going to be getting their 609 refrigerant handling certification. And they'll also learn the basics of HVAC, such as, the cycle of life and how the air conditioning system actually works. So, and then when you get to the DT400, you got diesel drivetrain and chassis electrical. So the diesel drivetrain is basically going to cover everything behind the engine. You have an engines class, now you're going to tie it into how that power goes from the engine to the wheels. So transmissions, clutches, torque converters, automatic transmissions, standard transmissions, drive shafts, U-joints, pinions, rear differentials, all of that stuff is covered in the diesel drivetrain class. And then the chassis electrical in 400 would be controllers, brake modules, computer modules, CAN networks and multiplexing and stuff like that, right?
No, it doesn't teach all that stuff. That's electrical.
Okay, so that's after. All right. And then what's in electronic systems and PMI then?
Yep.
Okay.
We just cover everything again and we put it in practical application.
So as you can see, we got 3 courses in a row where there's going to be some electrical training going on there. So, and then there's also electrical stuff in the first 2 classes, the 100 and the 200. So a little bit. So one of the things that they're going to get a lot of over all 5 classes is there's going to be some electrical stuff in all of them. The big thing about the 500 class is the preventive maintenance inspection. PMI is a big part of diesel technician's job. Meeting DOT requirements, safety of the truck. Those are big things that we spend a lot of time making sure they understand what's safe, how to tell if it's safe, how to tell if something's out of adjustment, how to tell if something isn't going to be kosher with a DOT inspector.
Loose, cracked, broken, whatever.
Yeah, how to properly document this kind of stuff. So all that is part of the program. So I'll take you out real quick and let you see the last lab we haven't looked at. It's mostly drivetrain stuff out here in this lab. So let's go take a look at that. All right, so this is our drivetrain lab. I'll get the lights on, it's kind of dark in here. But as you can see from all these transmissions right here, this is, like I said, everything behind the engine, right? So if you got a standard transmission, of course you're going to be transmitting power from the engine to the transmission via a clutch. So we'll teach them everything they need to know about clutches, how to install them, how to adjust them, how to maintain them. All right, and then they'll actually, something that they may never get to do in the field, but we'll get to do here at school, is completely disassemble one of these big transmissions, figure out how to set up the gears inside of them and so forth. Then once they learn the transmissions, they'll even get to practice removing and installing transmissions on the actual training aid right here. So we got transmission mounted to this engine, practice removal and reassembly, adjusting the clutch afterward. We got labs that go over air operated clutches and how to high range low splitters. And then of course you got, after you leave the transmission, you have drive shafts and U-joints and stuff, which we mostly teach out there on the actual trucks. And then after that, we come back in here and you can see there's a bunch of different differentials. We teach them things about the differentials, how to adjust lash on them, how to inspect them, replace them, keep them in shape, plus transfer cases that might be used for multi-axle drive lines. So pretty thorough, in-depth program here. Everything is covered from bumper to bumper on the truck, and we are working on introducing hydraulics into the curriculum again, and hydraulics will probably find its way into the 300 course between electrical and HVAC, but that's something that's on the horizon. You even talk about PTOs. You see this PTO mounted on the side of this guy right here. So hopefully this helps you guys out a little bit, lets you kind of know what we do in the different classes, the order we do it in, or the order the classes are lined up in. But like I said, there's very few prerequisites on this sheet, you know, so my 3 new students that I got right now are in 300, which is basic electric and fundamentals of heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. So they could start at 100, they could start at 300. It all kind of depends on what class is available and who's available to teach it at the time new students start. There really is only a couple of prerequisites here. We wouldn't expect someone who hasn't been to the other classes to know how to PMI a whole truck if they haven't been through the individual classes learning about the different parts and stuff. So if you guys have any questions at all during a tour, always feel free to bring the students by to talk to me, or prospective students by to talk to me. Also, any of our instructors are also willing to talk to prospective students. So our goal is to help you get more students in the door. So if you need help, just let us know.